Hello, welcome to the third ever Worcester Council Theater. Put my lapel mic on. Worcester Council Theater, Worcester Commenters Union Book Club. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. That's great. Serving us hybrid Twitch and in person. I decided not to set up the room cam because who really cares? But we got a nice crew down here, and we're excited to dig into chapters 4, 5, and 6 of 8 Hours for What We Will. And those are in the chat there. So you can pull up the links to the scans. Thank you everybody who's helped out scanning. I don't know if we have any scanners in the room, but much appreciated. It's so annoying that there's no actual digital version of this book, but we made one. So we have the only one. Cool. So since there's 3 chapters here, I think we should go chapter by chapter. But I'll sort of open it up if anybody has something that really jumped out at them from the first chapter, which is on saloons and drinking. Worcester's longtime favorite hobby. Everyone loves it. Yeah, I'll pull the book up here. One second. Big tab.
People online in the comments can link your tab.
No, I was thinking about setting that up and typing it through the loudspeaker, but there's no one online. So it's just we're just gonna ignore online basically and have a good old fashioned book club. Honestly, I don't even know why we do it on the stream. We should just stop. But it gets preserved so you can watch it later and follow along.
I was thinking about not having.
Just watching on the stream. Yeah. I mean, it's nice because you don't have to make every one. You can catch up if you want to. But yeah, chapter 4 starts off the struggle over the saloon, 1870 to 1910. And the first thing that jumped out to me was that the temperance movement was supported by elites who were themselves drinking. They just didn't want poor people to drink. They saw drinking as a luxury that only the rich and powerful should be allowed to do. And it's all of this stuff is just so mired in classism that kind of extends to this day.
It really, the one thing that made me laugh was the little, I don't remember if it was this chapter, probably was, but the cop who was supposed to enforce the temperance rules, but then was caught drinking on a temperance themed trip to Boston retreat thing.
Right.
Stuff when the cops are also drinking as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's super hypocritical. And then there was also that thing that's kind of towards the end of the chapter about how cops really didn't try to crack down on it because they were all working class Irish people. Yeah. They were oh, if we crack down on my buddy's saloon, then I'm never gonna be invited back there. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. Is the fact that they went through this yearly tradition of voting whether or not that year bars could be open. That's insane, right? Imagine if Worcester did that. Right. But then on the years where they the no movement or whatever won out, the bars would just still be open. The cops couldn't do anything. Excuse me.
It was a little hard to understand the whole regulatory environment because there was that overall vote, but then there was still individual licensing things that was separate from that.
Right. Yeah, because it's it's a lot different than it is today. I didn't really understand it either. I just kind of took it to mean like they had a vote once a year on whether or not licenses are a thing.
Right,
But then on top of that, whether you not could get a license was also
right.
yeah.
Also, it being legal to take metal.
What's that?
Is that some parts of the chapter I think it mentions that people would just buy alcohol or something else.
Yeah, right.
And just bring it in,
Yeah,
especially for like celebrations and stuff.
right. And
But not sell just within the city. That's what. So they would just buy it outside and bring it in.
yeah,
And not sell it officially. Just
right. They just sell it out of their apartment and such. And yeah, that towards the end of the chapter 2, there was like there's this line about how there's all these like the pervasive rum runners, which I thought was interesting. Oh yeah, private rum sellers on page 118. Whoever made the PDF for this week's reading made the best PDF so far. Very clean, very easy to read. We love it. Scrolling down to that. Yeah, what do we have here? Yeah, this is the cop talking about despite this quote warfare on liquor. Washburn admitted that I never knew the time when there were so many private families selling rum as there are today. Although 1/3 of the 70-man police force was already pursuing liquor violations, Washburn felt that he needed another 30 men to attack the illegal drink trade adequately. Just straight up admitting defeat. And I think that's just great. I think it's really like a testament to Worcester being ungovernable. And that really is like one of the overriding points of the entire chapter, in my opinion, is that while there was no like working class like power won via like the illegal drink trade or in the saloons or anything like that, they pretty effectively rid themselves of any sort of like enforcement or governing action on what they were doing. But the chapter opens more on this discussion of like the temperance movement and like the temperance mindset and like why people were being temperate. And I thought that was really, really interesting, especially the part about middle class. Like you to like buy your way into the middle class. One of the ways to do that was to like do this weird like temperance pledge ritual that like you did in front of a priest at church. And I don't know, it's really interesting, and I think that like you kind of see it to this day, like the pains that people take to find anything to like differentiate themselves from people they think to be of a lower class or like social status than themselves.
I also think it speaks to like the idea of like the middle class as like a normalizing force and like a respectability
Right.
body. And like how many of those people were actually
Right.
they
Yeah.
just did this like fun ritual, very camp, very exciting, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Right. I'm a good and decent stock.
Yeah.
I'm not like those rabble-rousing Irish masses getting drunk in the park. Speaking of that, I can't wait to talk about the park chapter. There's so much.
I think I missed something. What about taking that
Let me find that.
It was like, it's
103.
like social norm, like individual, like if you wanted to be somebody who could social climb, you had to like do this. Yeah.
Okay, social climb.
Right. So it's like an Irish person who doesn't want to be as Irish as the other Irish people will take the temperance pledge. I have it here. I think it's 103. I'm getting it.
I've got it right here.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Right. Temperance, one historian argues, was a symbol of middle class membership. Another historian adds, appealed to the aspiring working man. Some working class temperance supporters, who might be termed middle class mobiles, did see sobriety as a strategy for individual advancement, to become working class respectables and settled livers, which there's two ways to read that, right? Right? Is it settled living, or like your liver's more settled now that you stop drinking? Yeah. And then, I don't know, I felt he might have gone a little bit too long about the temperance radicals, but that was kind of interesting. They're like on like the super militant left, there was it was part of union organizing, like they tried to make temperance movements part of union organizing, and it didn't really work so well, especially in Worcester, which makes sense given Worcester, you know. But yeah, the taking of the pledge is on page 105, and that description was like, I could not imagine like a worse time. Like, it's just such a bad, like, that's how you hang out. You just go and you take the pledge. Yeah, so it's page 105, the bottom paragraph. The taking of the pledge was an individual decision, but one carried out in a social context. It was done while kneeling before a priest and was invested with both religious and communal sanctions, which were reinforced weekly or bi-weekly temperance society meetings and by attending Holy Communion as a group at least twice a year. So it was like really baked into Catholicism, and it seems like there were like two sets of Irish, which I think came up in an earlier chapter too, that some of the Irish were like really trying hard to be respectable, and the other ones were just drunk all the time and making a bad name for the respectable Irish.
Yeah, it was like the two Hibernian societies were like non-respectable, and the
Right.
groups were like, no.
Yeah. And then there's the Swedes, who are consistently the villain of the book.
Scabs.
So I'm trying to understand that whole thing
What happened?
This
about the role of the Swedes and how they were working class,
Well,
but
it
they were
sounds like
also
the-
pro-temperance. And
It
they
sounded
were,
like the industrial like bosses were using that way. Oh, like we have this, because it was the difference between the like church going Swedish people and the folks who just kind of didn't go to church, but like they were able to pit by like painting Swedish people like, oh, they're they're thrifty, they're they're hardworking, they're great employees. Like they were able to split the working class and get this
The model minority.
yeah,
the model
yeah.
minority.
And the Swedish were also Protestant, which lined
Yeah.
up with what they termed the Native Americans here. So not Native Americans. We think of indigenous people, but the white people who have been here were Protestant.
right.
And so Swedish people lined up with that versus the Irish Catholics.
Yeah, right.
It's like the like piety was something that's like a cultural feature, and then it was like the waspy like native, lowercase native, like that temperate inclination,
Yeah.
and then hit them against the other end of the community to scab a lot of these
It was,
that's how I heard.
yeah. It was almost like a colonial strategy. Like
Yeah.
the Yankees, like the money men who owned the factories were like, what if we made one ethnic group feel superior if they can be culturally closer to us, and then they'll like sort of police the other ethnic groups and set like a dichotomy between like good and bad poor person, right? And it was very effective. It works super well in Worcester. Gotta hand it to them. Gotta hand it to the Washburns. They really figured out how to make sure that Worcester never got worker power. Which is like, it's not like a huge through line in this chapter, but it's like, I mean, he does like make the argument later in the chapter, but I felt like on page 101, the first paragraph, in 1883, 100 manufacturers, ministers, lawyers, and bankers, a virtual who's who of elite Worcester, formed the Citizens Law and Order League to insist upon the enforcement of restrictive features of existing laws for the regulation of liquor traffic and attendant vices. So that's like, that lays it out pretty clearly to me. Like the whole temperance thing was a form of social control, a way to like exact or claim moral superiority to the working class in order to do social control.
This is just like what Greg wrote in Success Today.
Yes, it is.
Like, I want, well, why don't, like, children are buying cars, and there's a whole commentary in Worcester that says, well, they shouldn't have been jaywalking. The cops should really crack down on jaywalking.
Right.
It's the same impulse.
Yeah, it's their fault. Because I wouldn't be caught dead walking anywhere in Worcester, but I need to drive my SUV as fast as possible anywhere I'm going. Yeah.
Side note, jaywalking is a car industry term.
Yeah, actually, Greg got into that too. He was like, I'm gonna write a whole long big thing about that, and then he just wrote a sentence and like linked to something. But I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah,
I also didn't realize the penalties were so lenient.
Yeah.
jaywalk as much as possible.
It's like
Jaywalk
$1. Every time I'm over here, I jaywalk like 7 times. Yeah, go get my cheeseburger sub.
Yeah.
Go get a seltzer water. I'm jaywalking.
When I was reading this, I was like, who would be so gung ho about this? And then yesterday, when our CEO told me I had a quote bad attitude, I was like, she would be a temperate man. She would love temperance, and she would make it over for sure.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's such a perfect.
Yeah.
That's such a perfect transition to this one quote I pulled out. But I just, in my notes, I have temperance mindset. Because it was like the through lines here between like the grind set and the temperance movement, they're like kind of unavoidable. Because like listen to this and then just apply it to like literally anyone you know who's like in LA and recently sober, right? For the ambitious, self-improving mechanics of Ichabod Washburn's generation, temperance and evangelical Christianity were directed as much inward as outward, as much at self-control as social control. Thus, temperance and religion both responded to and hastened an emerging industrial capitalist society. They offered optimistic solutions to the personal anxieties and the problems of industrial discipline. So they're like, by bettering myself, I can better the world. Effective altruism stuff, you know? It's all the same.
Well, one of the things that stuck out for me too, and I don't think he really explores this as much as my own reading I've done on this over the years, is involvement of women in the temperance movement. And like last time we talked about violence, like he's really pushing women out of that cultural space where before there used to be a lot more mixing between men and women, and the drinking was done more in like what with like those like kitchen bars, and like now women are really kind of cut out. We see the industrial revolution like really kicking in and what it's doing to families, but I think women were feeling a lot of that, and for them it was a way of like first of all having some kind of social connection, but they were really struggling to maintain taking care of children and families with the husbands always out and someone who were legitimately blowing all their money at bars. You know,
Yeah.
so
Well, and probably misbehaving at home.
yes, a lot of abuse. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that because a lot of the temperance movement was like centered around the women's groups. One of them, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was like the Swedish Ladies Aid Society, which is like such a hell yeah name. Um, and then there was the Irish version too. And there was a whole passage about that. I don't think I made a page stamp in my notes, but it's a
It's a bit of a young women's lifespan on the bottom of the five and how they would take this pledge and then encourage their brother, fathers, and boyfriends to do likewise. This reminds me so much of the Puritan from like the 90s. This is like definitely
yeah, yeah,
you know, it's just, and it wasn't about actually socially to have a certain set of values, but there was no guilt. At least I don't know. But anyone's
right, right. It was about like asserting like a social status.
yes.
You know what it reminded me of is like in England when they were having when they're getting people to sign up for the war in World War II, they would have like ladies go around and like make fun of guys who didn't sign up to fight. It was like they would have like parades through the street where they like shame people who weren't signing up to fight, and it's like that would be super super effective. Like if all the women in my social circle were making me feel really bad about something, I would stop doing that. It's like that would work.
They, they couldn't pull out any figure that was not the authority to have them accountable.
Right.
Like, it would be either the priest or the employee, I guess.
Right. But I mean that it's a through line that like everyone was just drinking at home.
Seems to have a network of snitches. They all.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Was there to keep anybody accountable? Like how the cops all heard there. So it's like,
This is a naive question, but like, what were people drinking? Like, there was no Budweiser back then.
Yeah.
Like, what were people drinking? Where was it being made? How, like, what was the whole scene?
I'm sure it was super gross.
people are making stuff at home. Remember the beer, you know, this is like something that people used
Was
to
it like
do.
hard cider? A lot of it.
Probably too, yeah. But like I like slammed this book into my face today, like the whole thing. So
Nice.
it's really fresh in my mind.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
like the Shabines, which were the like women-owned like home bars, like they were brewing their own alcohol for people to drink. So I'm sure there was a lot of like homemade wine and cider, beer, water,
Hooch.
hooch, baby, yeah.
Love it. I like this right after that bottom of 105 and 106. The whole gist of that page is that like these temperance societies basically built new saloons to compete with the saloons. Like they like in order to peel people away from the saloons, the model for the temperance society was actually the saloon. Except for drinking. Like they made club rooms with newspapers, domino sets, gymnasiums, card tables, libraries, even pool tables, where they have band concerts, minstrel shows, excursions, lectures, debates, coffee parties, and dances. Basically everything that would happen at a saloon, but just like their own sort of, I guess, walled off saloon. Like a saloon where like the plebeians couldn't go because
But they didn't sell alcohol there?
they didn't sell alcohol. Right. Yeah. So
I think people loosen up.
yeah, I don't know. I'd be like, this stinks. I'm going to the saloon down the street. They got beers there. Yeah. But that's exactly it. Where it's like the point of that is not to have fun, because if it was, you'd just be selling people what they wanted. consume. The point of it is to like be different and better than, you know, to establish yourself as above a less than, and advance your way out of the slums of the East Side to a nice single family home on the West Side. Yeah, so that's actually a good point to talk about the whole thing of scapegoating, which I found interesting. Where's that? 103. Accurately or not? Oh, no, I think I have the page.
I was
number.
at
It's on one.
worker accident, total solution of alcohol, total cause. Distribution of power, wealth, and the organization of work under industrial capitalism.
Yes. To blame it all, to like resolve all of those contradictions, to just boil it down to alcohol is super reductive. And I really like this. This is the quote that I pulled out. The historian Harry Jean Levine, great name. This whole temperance ideology contained a powerful strand of fantasy and scapegoating. And then, yeah, right after that is the line you just read. And yeah, and then like the end of that paragraph is like the refrain that he always comes back to on every single issue that he covers. He goes, at least in Worcester, as we've seen, the saloon, the central focus of temperance venom, nurtured a working class culture that rejected but did not challenge the dominant cultural or economic order. It's like the Worcester working class is just like, leave me alone, let me have my saloon, stop being weird. Oh, speaking of being weird, did anyone catch the super Nazi stuff about the Swedes and the Viking blood? That was
I missed it.
page 112 at the bottom of it. So Swedes prefer to do their drinking in ethnic clubs, and they had like their own like walled-off ethnic clubs. There's a quote here: every inhabitant of our beloved city, especially the police officer and city marshal, complained one Worcester Swede in 1888, knows what kind of entertainments there used to be at the Mystic Brothers Hall, the headquarters of a Swedish fraternal organization, when the mystic influence of liquor had awakened their Viking blood. So I read that and immediately thought about how there was a Swedish-led Klan rally in the 1920s, right?
They didn't. Why didn't he mention that?
I know,
He just, like,
right? It's such an omission.
1970 to 1910, right? He's not into the 1920s.
Well, no, it goes up to 1920, but it's like, I think it goes up to 1920. But
Oh, yeah, 1920.
the Klan rally happened in like 22, I want to say. So
Yeah.
it's like 2 years off. It's like, brother, you couldn't have expanded it
Well,
by 2 years to get the coolest thing in. Cool in
But that
terms of,
Viking blood, there was some TV show that was all about that whole Viking thing, the power, the mystical power of Vikings, and all that stuff.
yeah, it's
It was a terrible.
all of that sort of thinking like is the real like cultural underpinning of Nazism. Like this even today, like neo-Nazism, everyone that's into that like gets heavy into runes and like pagan Norse religion, like yeah, right. Ren Fair is chock full of guys like that. Yeah. That's the like if you follow the like Hitler's idea of the Aryan race, you'll eventually end up in Norse mythology. Yeah. It's just so I guess it makes sense that the Swedes were the ones that did the Klan rally against my people, the Irish, and we beat the shit out of them. Fuck yeah. And I mean, it is funny to like just like it complicates the picture of the Swedes as being like this pious like group currying favor with the elite, because the next line here is the Swedes made up a disproportionate share of those arrested for drunkenness in Worcester. So they were both like fanatically temperate and also getting the most like belligerently drunk.
Yeah, well, people being hypocrites, that's nothing new.
Right? Yeah, that goes way back.
Well, in the next chapter, the next like paragraph is about like there's this split in the community of Swedish people between the like very pious
Right.
folks who go to church and the people who don't go to church, where else is how he explains it. I don't know if that's like the whole explanation for why. I mean, it's democracy.
Yeah.
So it says the PRS for drunkenness were in the 30s, so like later on.
Oh, okay.
So like
It started getting
during
more.
the whole like temperance thing, it seems like Swedes ethnic group behave as sort of like the lenient Protestant,
Right.
Canada, whatever.
Yeah.
But then later on somehow it's switched.
Yeah. They like achieved their desired social status and then became hedonistic. Yeah.
Just, I mean, I think it's especially weird considering that it says basically like after the first generation or so, the second generation was already like with one group in the middle class,
Mm-hmm.
or like most of the ethnic groups of the first wave.
Yeah.
So like having sort of them rediscover forgotten working class behaviors such as
Right.
it's weird. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, in the next chapter, which we should probably move to anyway. I think we talked about this one long enough. My favorite part of that, I was like chuckling reading it, even though it was like so dry, is that like the elites and the Swedes were like, oh wait, maybe playing sports in the park is cool. Yeah. Maybe we can have fun as well.
Well, let's just make it about
Right. But then they had to be weird about it. Yeah. They're like, all right, let's make up a bunch of rules so that we can reclaim having fun back from the ports and make it less fun for the ports.
I like all of those scenarios. It's like trying to like, get out of it and go do their own thing. They're like, we wanted the park, but now they're all telling us what to do. We don't want to play now. Okay, so we're going someplace else.
Right. Yeah, hold on. I'm just pulling up the chapter 5 here. Is that it?
The plan of our second. Just be that. The children express disdain for the adult efforts to keep with their plan, and that they either no longer feel the attempt, or either there is something that they. Yeah. They get on the nerves of so many men and women around, telling you what to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. I got it pulled up. So I love right off the bat here the fact that they tried to make Elm Park something you couldn't hang out in. Like the designer of Elm Park, who was like hugely influenced by the designer of Central Park, yeah, was where is it? Like there were like no touching the grass signs and stuff, and it just like that was never gonna work out. Like that whole like I mean it runs into this whole mindset of like the city beautiful, where it's like this period when like city planners were just trying to like compete with Europe for like architectural marvels, and they just had no concept of like people living in the city. They just wanted it to be like a big monument to opulence.
This paragraph, this chapter, made me feel very essentially conflicted about how much I like Town Park. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, but it's like a little equal.
Yeah. No, I will. What we're gonna get to, which I cannot wait to talk about, is Newton Hill, pure evil. Newton Hill was literally from its inception evil, and now you can play disc golf. So
So to say if it was bad or not. Yeah.
Maybe the best wedding hill.
the best sledding. I've never done that actually.
Top to bottom.
Really? Yeah, this clip that I pulled out, page 129, the clash between, where is it? This clash between what environmental historian J.B. Jackson calls two distinct and conflicting definitions of park. The upper class definition, with its emphasis on cultural enlightenment and greater refinement of manners, and the lower class definition, emphasizing fun and games, was a huge conflict at Elm Park. It's just absolutely ridiculous to me in 2024 to think that Elm Park would be used that way. Like everyone just walks around with their scrolls and just thinking about the meaning of life. It's like, no, Elm Park is just a place where you take your kids so they can run around. Yeah, yeah, and I mean, Elm Park is very, very heavily used. Like when you go there any given summer day, it's chock full of people, and that's great. And I just can't even imagine like looking at that and being, they're not thinking about the meaning of life. These guys have never read Plato, you know.
I've been to a lot of park on different times, but I still have the feeling that the atmosphere is overall conflicted on public parks. Like
Interesting.
nowadays.
Yeah. How so? There's
Look, it's like the little bridge. And
Yeah.
It's just meant for you to like walk around instead of like do games and sports.
right. And people do games and sports anyway, but that's a good point because there's no like volleyball net or fields. There's a playground in the middle, but other than that, it's like they put in art installations, which I think is nice. And they have like big austere trees and a swan pond, I guess. Are there ever actually swans in that pond? I don't think- No.
Yeah, I
Remember those orange?
that ever there.
A herring? That's
Yeah,
it.
there's that.
Yeah. Right. Oh, the little orange tubes were great. Yeah, that was a great art installation. Yeah, yeah. I am really surprised that none of those got stolen. Yeah. You know what? This makes me. I feel like I talked about this in the past book club. Maybe I did. I want to do a pumpkin trebuchet from the top of Newton Hill. We talked about this, right?
Yeah.
A pumpkin trebuchet from the top of Newton Hill.
Well, we need the guys back.
We need the guys back to catch the pumpkins all the way into the lake at Elm Park.
Yeah.
And we could do that in October. You get a big trebuchet up there. You fire it, the pumpkins. They go over Park Ave, and they smash into the water, and everyone would have probably the funnest time they ever had.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Or like a giant slingshot?
No, like a trebuchet, like a catapult.
Oh, the real thing.
Yeah. You build a real one. Yeah. Any excuse to build a trebuchet.
I didn't know.
But Elm Park and Newton Hill have never been about having fun. That was never the idea. This is when I first read through this book. This was the detail that really, really spun me. I'm sorry. Page 130, the middle of it, the paragraph that starts in January 1884. 231 members of Worcester's elite, including several ex-mayors and many leading manufacturers, petitioned the city council to purchase Newton Hill, 60-acre tract adjoining Elm Park. Their motivation, however, was not entirely aesthetic or recreational. They also saw Newton Hill as the ideal spot for a reservoir that would provide fire protection for their fashionable West Side homes. They literally bought Newton Hill and left it that way so that if the slums ever caught fire, it would not spread up to their houses.
I misunderstood, because I was like, how are you gonna put a reservoir on the hill?
No, like a tree reservoir,
I see.
not a water reservoir. Yeah,
I was very.
like if the slums ever burnt all the way down, the fire.
Because fires were more common.
Right,
Like,
right.
We've been having a lot of fires, obviously, recently here in Worcester, but those kinds of fires used to happen a lot all the time.
Yeah. So the west side is on the other side, and the fire wouldn't move so quickly through the trees as it would like rows of tenement housing. So Newton Hill is literally a fire. It was a physical like not man-made, the opposite of man-made, a natural wall between the wealthy part of town and where the poorest live. Like where the poorest live is allowed to burn down, but hey, we got to buy this hill so it doesn't come up our way. You know what I mean? It's pretty. That's a really sort of radicalizing idea to chew on when you consider that nothing has changed even a little bit since this time in terms of the class dynamic of Worcester.
Right.
But then the end of that paragraph gets into the whole sort of tension of this chapter where like the Board of Aldermen became like the arena where like working class people on the east side and west side people would fight over park funding because the people on the east side were becoming increasingly crowded and increasingly dense neighborhoods, and they needed somewhere to go that wasn't their house to like play. And it became like sort of a pitched battle between east side parks and west side parks. And the east side people were like, bro, you're not even using your parks. Like they're just sitting there to look beautiful, and like we just need somewhere to run around, right? 131. Where is it? The effects of this increasing density were felt most strongly on the working class east side. The intensification of land use and the concurrent increase in property values encouraged the development and enclosure of vacant land previously used as play space. So the working class people of the east side were trying to fight off this like city beautiful attempt to scoop up vacant tracts of land and turn them into these austere parks that nobody could use. And this is also an important thing to consider, noting that only the rich could afford excursions to seashore and mountain. The letter writer asks, where are the masses of people to seek for rest and recreation, sunshine, and the refreshing breezes of summertime? Because this was like before Worcester even had a trolley system, I think that he points out here.
Or before it was electric.
Or before it was electric, yeah, before it was electrified. So it was very difficult for anybody who was working class in Worcester to like get out of even like their little neighborhood. And at the same time, you have people coming in and trying to scoop up the places where they're playing to turn them into these like parks with rules. And then 131, the first time I read this chapter, I didn't notice this paragraph, but like the last full paragraph on 131 is like, this could have been written in 2024. For its part, the city's elite was determined to prevent working class encroachments into its west side precincts. When a single family of French Canadians settled on Elm Street in the 1880s, it disturbed the, quote, social serenity of the neighborhood. I mean, just cue Mo Bergman talking about the character of the neighborhood. According to the Worcester Sunday Telegram, soon a, quote, terrible fear swept West Side society in response to a rumor that cheap tenement blocks filled with the representatives of all nations would be erected on the same spot. Right. Like this is exactly the sort of anxiety you stoke or you prod at when you say something like single family zoning shouldn't exist, because that's like the legacy of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the only way the West Side calmed back down is when manufacturer Philip Moen purchased the property. West Siders heaved a sigh of relief. They completely freaked out about the idea of representatives of all nations moving into cheap housing in their neighborhood. And I don't know, just go to a zoning board of appeals meeting, and the same thing still happens. You know,
What is the part of the West Side that's more diverse?
like wait, the part that's more diverse.
Yeah, I'm thinking what area of the West Side that they referring to here.
Oh, this is like basically like where we are right now is like what the West Side was back then. Up Highland Street and west of Park Ave, and then June Street here, and then like anywhere west or north of Elm Park. Yeah, and then on the other side, it was like the east side at the time, where all the poors lived. Yeah. Hence the need to have a totally preserved mountain in between the two. Yeah. Oh, 137. Bums on the Common. That is also like nothing. Nothing at all. It could have been written. It could have been written today. Where is it? Oh yeah, bottom paragraph, 137. As the city's most central and visible park, the Common became the object of repeated middle-class complaints upon improper use, particularly by working-class patrons. Generally, the commentators grumbled about, quote, dirty, unkempt people, bums, idlers, who loiter, loaf, and even sleep off drunks. The implication was that these offenders against public decency were habitual drunks or transient hobos. Although a few of them were homeless drunkards, many seem to have been unemployed workers. That's exactly the way that people talk about the Common. And it is, I don't know, it's just like that reading that kind of stuff, it just makes you think, you know, more things change, more things stay the same.
The notion of unemployed worker.
Right.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. Like what's? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's.
You mean like someone that generally works?
Right.
But not right now.
It could even mean like they're on break, right? Like, what is it on like that they're just not currently actively working, and that's why they're resting. Right. Yeah.
I think it's underlying of the notion that if you're homeless, you don't have a job. So thank you.
Yeah.
So like it's more if you have a job or not than if you have a home or not. Or if you ever worked.
It's a weird rhetorical way to distinguish between the people that you have every right to be mad about and the people who you shouldn't be mad about. It's like there's no real distinction.
The
You know?
way that the author wrote that paragraph.
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, like, he uses the term Native American to describe like white people. So you gotta take all this stuff with
Well,
it.
this is old.
Yeah, it's from '84.
No discussion of black people. There were black people here.
Yeah.
And then also, in that section, that last chapter, you did mention something about the Black Methodist Church. And I thought, oh, so he does realize that there are black people here.
Yeah,
Just choosing not to study them.
right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, he does give the impression that it's like, oh, it was all just like vaguely proto-white immigrant groups. Yeah.
The unemployed, I mean, that's like obviously totally capitalist plan. Like if you are not already wealthy and are the middle class, then you are a worker. And so if you are uncommon, you're not working, that's bad. You're an unemployed worker. Do something about that.
Right.
You're working, go into one of those factories. Right?
You know, and when I think about like, so what was space like back then, right? So most of these homes were overcrowded. People didn't have their own rooms. Great spaces. This was before OSHA, so I'm sure the workplace was not exactly picnic. So the need to just get out of those places must have been enormous.
Right.
I
Right.
think at one point they talked, like, there's some quote from like the someone in the elite who was talking about like, oh, you know, if we, I think it's one of their like propaganda temperance talking points of like, oh, if we promote temperance, then they'll save their money and then they'll be able to afford more space at home and then they'll spend more time in the home bettering themselves.
Oh,
Right.
So,
Just completely ignoring the fact that like the society needs poor people or it falls apart.
right.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
No way to ever have that.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah. But I think that's like to your point, like people were forced into public spaces because they needed to just get space.
yeah.
yeah.
Get in a backyard, you know.
No.
Any of that stuff.
There's a I don't think I made a note of it. But it's right around the 138, 139. There's like a description of that whole thing where people just needed to get out.
This is when people are having sex.
Oh, somebody got pregnant at Elm Park.
Oh yeah.
No.
First of many.
Yeah. My note for that is 139, sexy time.
Yeah.
In 1879, for example, the Worcester Evening Star reported that a 22-year-old Irish immigrant had become pregnant after a, quote, too intimate acquaintance with a young man at Elm Park.
Who told the news?
Like, yeah, good point. That was a news story? Yeah. Oh, you know what you got to write about today? Some girl got pregnant.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
Did you hear about Lisa at the park?
Yeah, right. Like they either had way too many reporters or there was nothing going on. Some years later, the Labor News guardedly hinted of similar youthful sexual adventures when it reported that young people of both sexes resented the lighting of North Park. Hey, turn the lights off. You know how hard it is to get sexy in here with all these lights? Yeah, that's awesome. This is really funny. Where is it?
There was also one quote where somebody is like, "Oh, we have to control what they're doing in the parks, otherwise they're going to have orgies there."
Yes, I pulled the orgies line up. A place of orgies, 138.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he feared the area would be turned into a, quote, place of orgies on account of the proximity to East Park, which has been and will be made a place both night and day by men, women, and boys of carousal and drunkenness, to be avoided by all decent people. Yeah, the bad part of town where there's orgies. This whole analysis takes us right into on page 140. The subhead, the discovery of play, it opens ironically at around the same time that Worcester's workers were finally winning play space suited to active recreation. The city's middle and upper classes were gradually adopting some of the same preferences for sports and play over repose and contemplation. They're like, man, all this repose and contemplation is boring. I want to play baseball, you know? And like this whole section gets into how they couldn't just hang out with the people already playing, baseball and football or whatever in the parks. They had to like bureaucratize it and make it about the grind set, right? Like they had to justify it to themselves. What? Oh yeah, Mayor George Wright told the Society crowd that Worcester's parks were no longer just quote sacred spots, places merely to be looked at. They are used. They are coming more and more to be places of recreation as well as places of rest. Meanwhile, like the working class has been doing that for decades now. And yeah, the author says it's like an instrumental view of play. That like they couldn't just play; they needed to have some sort of like rhetoric of betterment and like distinction around it, which I think is super interesting. I mean, it reminded me of like, how if you're even when I was in high school, it was like, oh, you have to do all of these clubs and sports and stuff if you want to get into college, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, you need to do band if you really want to learn how to play music. It's like you need to do band if you want to look good for the higher education institutions that then determine whether you're a real person or not, right? It's like,
Yeah, I was surprised to see G. Stanley Hall called out.
G. Stanley Hall.
G. Stanley Hall was a very famous psychologist before. Supposedly, at least when I was studying years ago, he was like the father of American adolescence, like defining adolescence.
Oh, okay.
And I think may have been the one from like Freud before that, around the 1800s.
Well,
But then I went, oh my goodness, he was like let's make play in this academic thing, and we'll turn these kids into productive citizens, and I don't know. So.
right.
Yeah, right, yeah. Eugenics, huge fan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody who's super into eugenics would also be into the instrumental nature of play. Right. No. Yeah. I mean, this is all.
I have more to find out about this guy.
Yeah.
Something about children's spirit needing to be broken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wonder what that means.
Basically, like
Yeah.
they're born evil.
Right. Yeah. How to beat your kids and feel good about it. Yeah, this quote here on Work Pages 43. Having finally liberated play from its Puritan cage, middle-class leaders felt it must now be kept on a tight rein, not only for their own class, but especially for the working class. Yeah, and that's where G. Stanley Hall comes in. And there was a line here about how like blue collar. Yeah, on 147. Blue collar, top of the page. No blue collar workers, trade unionists, or representatives of the city's recent Italian, Polish, or Lithuanian immigrants were among the approximately 30 directors of the Athletic Association. Worcester's working class had joined actively in movements for public play space, but it took no part in the movement to supervise and control play. That's true in many ways today. Like as soon as the middle and upper classes glommed onto it as a means of social control, the people who built it up from the ground were boxed out. And it became bureaucratized and rigid. Oh, and then on that same page, oh my God, this made me think of the way that we talk about recreation in Worcester, which I've always had a really big problem with, because it's great that the city is giving kids jobs, but like the way we talk about it is not that. And this line at the bottom, the start of this paragraph, the specter of juvenile crime was a staple of the playground from its inception. Movement leaflets luridly asks, shall we provide a playground or enlarge the jail? Yikes. They're going one place or the other, you know? Yeah, and I that rhetoric, I don't know. I don't even really know how to express it, but it's just
Well, it's like
it's just shit.
it's really bad for sure, and it's also like a very rapid adoption of this like kind of eugenics idea of like children need to be their play needs to be controlled. They need to be
Right.
they're evil. They're born evil, and the rest is and it's like yeah, that's like not that long of a. It didn't take long for them to make that leap.
Right.
Of, like the children are evil, especially the children of the poorest.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And even in that next paragraph, in addition to becoming law abiding citizens, playground users would become client workers. In our playground, we did not forget to teach children to work as well as to play.
Father
And
McCoy.
it's much more focused on the poorer children. You know, whereas children in the more affluent side have a little more freedom to play.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like there's an irony here, I think, too, of like, or just like an inconsistency with the analysis because it's like, oh, these poor children are like inherently evil and must be dealt with in a certain way because they're being raised by poor adults who don't know how to handle them.
Exactly.
But like, none of these upper class people were raising their own children. They were employing lower class poor people, or to raise their children for them.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Right? Like
Actually, Mary Mullaney, former school committee member, I when I was writing about like why would she do that sex ed, pulled an email of hers that was like that same exact rhetoric. It was like these poor children of like unkempt whatever of like parents who don't know how to parent basically, and like the whole thing was like steeped in that like anti-Planned Parenthood sort of conservatism, and it's like literally the same sort of like I guess patronizing or paternal attitude that like the working class is something that needs to be saved from itself and sculpted and shaped, but it's like.
But also, like, I'll hire somebody and pay them $30,000 a year to raise my child.
Right. Yeah, just completely like oblivious, intentional
But
or
they
not.
can't be trusted to raise
Right.
The watchful eye.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Under my supervision. Yeah.
their own.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like this whole like temperance and the way they talk about playgrounds here, just like they just either don't know or don't want to know that like the exploitation of like half or more of the population is literally necessary for you to sustain your lifestyle in the system. Like they're just completely oblivious to that. And like I don't think that that's gone away at all. And after that, it gets into this whole thing about how like people try to claim that the playgrounds were some great melting pot, but like people stuck to their own communities, and it's like we've talked about that a lot. I think that's like it's interesting, but it's not the most interesting part of this chapter.
One part before we like past it that I was fascinated by is how when you make a playground and put it in a tennis court, it can only be used really to play tennis. And this is the same way that like the new super safe playgrounds around the city still work. And I recently took my kids to the new Indian Hill playground, which is near my house, and there's this like big plastic sign that says like observe nature. And there's like a picture of a bird. It's like listen to the sounds of nature. It's on Correct Street, right before you get out of the all you can hear is traffic, but like somebody had this idea that children should be listening to birdsong. And it has no relationship to how kids would want to like actually spend their time or even like what's possible in the space.
Right.
And I love this section that's like, oh, that goes back so much farther than I thought.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, where was that? Did you have a page number for? I think it's right around here. But
Favorite tennis court.
yeah, I did make a note of it. But
Or roller
right, roller skating.
skating. Do that.
My friend has a huge dog and she roller skates, so she takes the dog onto the tennis court and has the dog pull her around on roller skates. It's very funny to watch. Where is that tennis court part? Oh, I found it. 145, bottom of it. Carefully graded and laid out regulation tennis courts could not be easily used for anything but that sport. Nor could children confronted with metal swings and gymnastic apparatus use this equipment or the space on which it stood for anything but its intended purposes. These years also saw the inauguration of an elaborate system of park permits for picnic grounds, ball fields, and tennis courts. I don't know if anybody's been following one of the side stories of Worcester politics over the past couple months, but the way that the Parks Department does permitting to this day is still fucked. Like the Caribbean Carnival has a hell of a time. There's just like very obvious racism going on.
Or just like a monopoly, who gets to have like the licensing to be vendors and like on cars.
Yeah, right.
The whole
Yeah.
process of trying to get in on that.
Yeah. So I mean, you see the roots of that going back to here too. I mean, the permits cropped up once like people were trying to use this like exclusionary park architecture for something different. And they're like, okay, we need to have a permitting process to like cut down on that. And it's like who designed it and who was it built for, right? What else? What else in this one? Like, I remember there being something else I want to talk about.
Like this whole chapter made me like think about what they would. I think a lot of things are fascist, and then there's even more things that I didn't realize were fascist.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's like, oh damn, Elm Park is fascist.
So fascist.
Are we the baddies? Yeah.
Even the playground on Elm Park is taking a thing that was already shitty and just making it more fascist. in
Right,
another
right.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that is that's like a good tagline for this book. A bunch of things you never thought of as being fascist actually are super fascist. Sobriety, fascist. Just kidding. If you're sober, that's great. It's a good thing to do. But the tradition of it, when you look at it in a certain light, it looks a little fascist.
Trump
There you go. He just eats McDonald's. That's why he's gonna live to be 200. Yeah, he's picked. I really like the way that this chapter ends. With this whole like extended quote from an 1890 Worcester Evening Gazette, describing in detail how Worcester workers played freely in Institute Park during lunchtime. Before the 12:05 whistle blows, the crowd begins to arrive from Washburn and Mullins, the envelope shops, electric light station, and many other establishments north of Lincoln Square. After eating, a good romp is indulged in by the girls. Running and racing about. People talk so weird back then. A good romp is indulged in by the girls. With now and then a scream of laughter and some mishap, a fall perhaps, occurs to one of their numbers. Some of them wandered about in pairs or groups, exchanging girlish confidences or indulging in good-natured banter with their masculine shopmates. Who's this guy? You know, like just cut all of this. Occasionally, a boat is secured by some gallant youth who rows a load of laughing maidens about the pond. Yeah.
What would it be
Yeah. What would it be like to be able to hang out in the
like?
park? Yeah. The younger men try a game of baseball, a little general sport, jumping, running, etc. While their elders sit about in the more shaded spots, smoking their pipes. Like, is this like Jane Goodall? You know, right about 8. But when the whistles blow previous to 1 o'clock, there is a general stampede to the shops. And in a few minutes, all of the remaining can be counted on one's fingers. And then this line here really got me. No matter how much autonomy Worcester workers achieved in their leisure space and time, they still had to confront the factory whistle. So, you know, like, you didn't really win that much. you might be able to play any parks, but not as much as you want. And you still have to go to work every day. So that's kind of also where we're at today, in terms of building any sort of real left wing
About
movement.
this paragraph, it just reminded me of like recess, when I was in, like middle school, like we
Yeah.
still had recess. in school.
We were
I remember we were
trained.
just like running around.
Yeah.
To do things like, they don't have recess in middle school.
They don't.
I was subbing in middle school for a number of years and they don't have it anymore.
I didn't have recess in middle school.
So you just have
Sure,
your
yeah.
lunch and you're in the cafeteria and you get right back to class.
No, I guess I didn't. I guess it's just gym. Gym is crazy to think about in the context of this chapter. It's like taking recess and making it something
Like,
that you can
so maybe get
quantify.
supervised.
Right.
We were
Something,
not supervised.
Yeah.
We were just run.
right. Gym is like taking recess and finding a way to measure how much you're bettering yourself via recess.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Gym is fascist recess.
Well,
Well, it's interesting, like, because in the early '60s, I mean, it was President Kennedy's physical fitness program.
Yeah. Look at that guy.
And they would like count how far up the rope could go and how many pull-ups, and they were
Yeah.
like, literally like, what kind of a soldier is this 7-year-old going to become?
yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The V-sit reach. Yeah.
That was George Bush.
That's George Bush.
Yeah, that was Bush. He
Yeah.
really wanted us to touch our toes.
These kids got to be able to touch their toes. Yeah. And look how that worked out for him. Somebody touched their
Yeah,
toes
he
enough
was-
to take the shoe right off. So true. All right, that's my main takeaway from book club today. Is that gym is fascist recess, and fascism exists all around us in the historical record.
This chapter does conclude though by giving us the impression that Institute Park is the least fascist park
Right,
that we've yet come across.
but now,
But now,
yeah, it's kind of just like
empty for the
It's-
most part.
it's just WPI sitting on
Yeah,
like
it's like
they're padding their endowment. And
very
also,
creative.
they have Gateway Park, which I just learned was a park, which is just like literally like a front lawn for nothing in front of the new WPI Biotech thing
Yeah.
over by Ralph's. It's like right at the corner of what's it? Grove Street.
Like, fire stations.
No, closer, so.
Across from the
both
boat
Lincoln
blocks.
Square, So Grove Street and, yeah, like the whole Lincoln Square, area, that big green space in front of that new, yeah, that's not that.
Down by the highway to get on the highway.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's called Gateway Park with a WPI sign on it. It's literally just grass with 2 benches.
And you never see anybody on.
You never see anybody on it. No.
Spots.
You can't walk on that.
There's nothing to do. You know, if they put like a tennis court or something, then maybe I can go roller skating
They
with
would
my dog.
make it just a
But
little bit more fascist.
yeah,
Probably
no, you gotta check that out because it might be the most fascist part. It's literally just WPI's just sitting on it, waiting until they raise enough money to. Yeah, and they're calling it a park, which is very exciting. Yeah. Sure.
At some point they mentioned how the committee changed its name from like Parks Committee to Parks and Recs.
Parks and Rec. Did I? Is that's in chapter 5?
I suppose it's called Parks.
Right. That would make sense. So there was a point when they changed it from like the parks to
To Parks and Recreation.
right.
I think it's probably towards the end.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting tie in everything we've been talking about. It's like you have to bureaucratize recreation.
I was just wondering if like can we claim that Worcester has the like was the first place that actually changed its name? Like nationally it's called like that, right?
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Parks and Recreation.
Right. Worcester is a lot like the show Parks and Recreation. So that would be a good tie-in if you're the first city in the country to be like, we need a recreation department to control the way these kids recreate. Yeah.
We can add that to the long list of Worcester inventions.
Yeah.
142.
142.
Basically when it's changing to right.
Oh, and that's the paragraph about the instrumental.
Yeah, it was right.
Yeah.
To
Oh,
symbolize-
Parks Commission is reconstituted as the Parks and Recreation Commission. After that guy was like, wait, do we have fun?
Right. Can we make it okay for ourselves to have fun
Do we have fun?
by riddling it with rules?
Do you really
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that old Puritan cage will get you. That would be interesting if that's a Worcester invention. Then we can claim our own little slice of American fascism. And it also is interesting that it ties in with this like cultural moment of Teddy Roosevelt and like the rugged individualism and like I don't know that whole sort of like recreation becoming like a macho thing. Where before everyone was very like a pet, and that's around the time they needed to have a like bureaucratized recreation was like when it became accepted by middle and upper classes. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I feel like there's a big gender element to all of this and like masculinity element to all of this. Like the people who work using their bodies are like looked down upon, but also like looked at as a model of masculinity at the same time.
Right.
And like the overseers are like kind of soft and like feeling insecure about themselves, and they're like, oh, we're gonna embrace Teddy Roosevelt's like rugged individuals,
Yeah.
so we can be men, and then now we're gonna like play sports,
Yeah.
because we have to better ourselves. It's like it's really pretty, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it's like it's like how many secret times have like they like rode by on their like double horse-drawn carriages watching kids play soccer or whatever, and they're just
or,
like,
long
oh, it
days.
makes me so mad.
Yeah.
Why does it make me so mad? And they're like, wait,
Seeing
what if we?
rich dudes walking home from the mill, being
Yeah.
like, God damn.
Oh, they're so much
why is
worse
that
than me.
Yeah.
They're so much worse than me. I just
Yeah.
want to shake
Well,
their hand,
And in Worcester, right?
feel their strength.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Nature Taylor was here in the 1890s, right?
Isn't it? I don't
1890s to the early 1900s.
I don't
He
know.
was like this world-class bicycle racer at a time when bicycle racing was kind of a white thing. And he was in Worcester, and he was like a world champion.
Oh yeah, 1889, 1899, and 1900.
Yeah,
All right, put that on the list of curious emissions. From
yeah.
You're
You mentioned the black people.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a little museum for them Underground courthouse.
Yeah. I haven't been to that yet. Is it worth it? Is it worth going to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, they were great. The bicycle racing scene was nuts. Nuts.
There was just a documentary or something made about that. And they just did the George Street Challenge recently. So I've always wanted to go to that. I never have. They ride the bike up that street. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it. I mean, you're not going to win.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd probably get about halfway and be like, well, that's just because I'm better than all these people. I just can't do it because I'm better than them and more learned. Anyway, so chapter 6 is let's move on to that. Everyone's cool with that. I think it's time. This is the shortest of the 3 chapters too, but it has some real banger descriptions, particularly of one Italian man, which I am excited to get into. That's it. So chapter 6, the struggle over the 4th of July, the most Kid Rock holiday of all the holidays, described back then as the vacant national holiday. And was met by the way that people were celebrating was so out of control that the Safe and Sane Crusade emerged in Worcester to try to tamp down all the rabble. I mean, the description of what people were doing during the 4th of July is just amazing. The Worcester hired as many as 60 special police to supplement the regular force, issuing period ordinance banning Chinese crackers, toy cannons, firecrackers more than 3 inches in height, in length rather, and prohibiting the use of fireworks and noisemakers. But then people were on top of 154. People were just inventing new noisemakers every year that weren't banned yet.
One with the cannon that they like put together in a ramshackle.
Yeah, yeah.
Cannon.
Yeah, I think I made a note of that one. Nope, I didn't. Yeah, horns, firecrackers, torpedoes, revolvers. Sounds awesome. Main Street was full of men and boys, the Worcester Telegram reported, much to the chagrin of all the landed gentry. Just imagine like that being like cause for concern. Main Street was full of men and boys. I say that, and then I think about like the Black Lives Matter demonstration, and that was literally just people being on Main Street, and it was cause for enough concern to fire tear gas.
Yeah.
So, more things change, right? The ignominious toot of the tin horns. Like, I don't even have a mental picture. Didn't you grab a picture of that?
Well, yes, the fish horns.
Oh, the fish
The
horns.
fish horns.
Yeah.
Very, it's just like a brass. Like a little horn. I don't know. I wanted
It's
to.
like a bugle.
I tried to find a video of like what it sounded like, but because they kept pulling up like different ska bands, and I like don't have time to scroll through all the different ska bands.
Yeah.
Archival footage of this horn.
Yeah. We gotta go through all the waves, all 4.
Yeah.
All 4, arguably 5. Oh yeah, bottom of 154. Such a sick. I wish this happened this year. Like crowd 20,000 people. Oh no, that's not correct. That's about a horrific fire. I don't wish that happened this year. There was another one where it was like a huge party in the streets. Yeah, according to the Telegram, rough elements, many of them drunk, using firearms and powerful explosives with utter abandon, hurling dynamite crackers at streetcars, and shooting Roman candles into crowds. It's like you're not beating the violent mob allegations with this kind of behavior, but it does seem like it would have been a lot of fun. But yeah, so just like the elites were concerned with kids playing and people drinking in saloons, the fears of public disorder and mob rule were very pressing for them. And curiously, funny how this works, interesting. The mob they were most concerned about was the growing immigrant population from Southern and Eastern Europe. It doesn't really say, if they were the ones doing the cool big mobs on the 4th of July, but that's how the newspaper chose to paint it. There's a lot of newspaper complicity in like stoking anxiety about the way that people partied in this chapter, page 156 especially. Yeah, so this safe and sane movement was underpinned by the newspapers repeatedly reporting like breathless reports about these like immigrant mobs that are shooting off dynamite, which does sound wicked dangerous, but probably pretty safe.
It also had pretty awesome.
Was that?
Isn't it pretty awesome? Ultimately?
Yeah, I've read
I guess
nothing.
it seems like it's a lot of exaggerating from the press here. It's
Oh, yeah.
what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Burning down the city in a single night.
yeah, the modern press would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, remember the wheelie kids? The way that like the Telegram wrote about that, like. It was like, oh, our streets are overrun by a dangerous horde.
13-year-olds on third fight.
Yeah, right.
Like you're doing
Yeah, our streets are overrun by kids doing cool tricks on bikes. I hate it.
They're awesome.
Right. Yeah, you
That's
see it.
how this headline Italian celebrates couldn't speak English but could fire a revolver. That's how that sounds to me.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It was such an insane headline. Italian celebrates. Couldn't speak English but could fire revolver shots. Like, what the rhetorical like logic of that is crazy. It's like, I didn't know people who can't speak English could shoot guns. I thought only English speakers could shoot guns.
I feel like the other thing that makes me think about is like, it just like the vibe it gives off is like, oh, our large working class community has access to a lot of weapons. We should do something about that.
Right.
Is what this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think that headline is like, can't do something useful but can shoot them. Like,
Right.
not doing the right thing here. not
Yeah.
learning English.
Right. Not assimilating, but is shooting
Yeah.
guns. Yeah.
I mean, we thought it was mentioned. Foreigners who have no earthly business to be celebrating 4th of July. So like,
Yeah.
there was a whole category of people that were just supposed not to be happy having a holiday.
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's not for you, like.
Yeah.
Was your grandpa be a Minuteman?
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like this, I feel like wasn't this around the same time that like, right, like Sacco and Vanzetti, like Italians are being associated with like an anarchist movement as
Right.
well in the same.
Yeah.
So I
This
feel
is
like
this is the
is,
same
like,
time.
Drawing a parallel.
Yeah.
That's like context for this headline, I think.
Sacco and Vanzetti condemned to death by a Worcester judge.
Yeah.
Believe it or
Who
not.
has to burn down?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, I can't remember his name. Yeah, so like the people that are upset about this, the sons and daughters of the American Revolution. If you think about that in the context that you were just bringing up about how like there's a sentiment that like immigrants don't deserve to celebrate the 4th of July, of course you would start a group named the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution. Like that's how you distinguish. It's like, yeah, my family's been here. We get to celebrate it. You don't. And I mean, but like the next paragraph, bottom of 156, does like like people were dying. Like every 4th of July, people were getting hurt. People were dying. So it's not like, it's completely out of nowhere. But was it the slaughter of children as described by the Safe and Sane movement? Probably not. So go ahead.
It's something interesting also coming up with is that apparently Italians were celebrating as if they would probably celebrate nowadays New Year's Eve
Mm-hmm.
the same way in the 1900s than they do in 2024.
Right.
I mean, like this whole idea of like celebrations leading to like injured and maybe even deaths. It's kind of like happening.
Oh yeah.
They couldn't change it.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve in Italy, especially in South Italy, is crazy. Like
Really?
they don't want to be on the streets.
Really?
Yeah,
Like it's it's total anarchy. It's like the purge.
yeah. Like you read the newspaper. Like you read the newspaper the day after that. It's like just the list of people like losing fingers and their hand and an eye or whatever.
Right.
It's not worse.
Yeah. It's I think in one of the earlier chapters, the 4th of July was talked about, like 4th of July, New Year's Eve. There was like only a couple holidays where people could really let it loose. So obviously, if you only have,
that many days off.
if you got one day a
Sunday
year,
was church and whatever. So like, how many holidays did you have?
right? If you got one day to let it rip, you're gonna let it rip super hard. You're gonna be stockpiling that dynamite all year.
Yeah.
When did the Star Spangled Banner become the national? With all that celebration of rockets and bombs and red glare and all that stuff.
But those are our rockets. They're not.
Oh, those are not.
They're not foreign.
Those are Washington.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Those are our damn rockets. They exist in a fictional context. Stop throwing it at my Model T. So, like the Worcester Safe and Sane movement just reminds me a lot of, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Certain, like, I don't know. I'm blanking on what was it? The anti-sex ed stuff, especially. But there, when the wheelie kids were a thing, and everyone who comes out to talk about how to be a shot spotter or whatever, it's like it's extremely paternalistic and moralizing and just trying to enact social control, which has been the same in all three of these chapters. And interesting that it hasn't gone away at all. It's like the sons and the daughters of the American Revolution still exist to this day. And like, the origins of it are sort of fascist. I have here 158, where there's a good description of riots and fear. Where is it? Oh yeah. A riot. This is what I was trying to bring up earlier. A riot broke out at the lake at 3 a.m. with a crowd of 300 throwing whiskey bottles and stones at officers who tried to arrest a man for disturbing the peace and firing a revolver. Like they were just like, no, fuck you, do not get in the way of our one party a year. In addition, whatever the location, heavy drinking continued to be an integral part of celebrating the 4th. In 1908, express companies brought 8,000 gallons of beer into Worcester on the day before the 4th, and drunkenness arrests were more numerous than in previous years. 8,000 gallons of beer. Like we gotta get these guys loosed up.
And about the temperance year.
Right. was a year where busing people, so those are the companies running it.
Right,
Oh,
right.
we can't sell it in there, well, we'll just get this other company to bring it from the outside.
Yeah, 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 and that's I mean that goes back to the chapter 4. It's just like there was absolutely no way to enforce all this moralism. So was it more about like the social control of the lower classes, or defining what it meant to be upper class? That and just like punishment. Let's see. Any other thoughts on this chapter? I'm running out of things that really grab me on it. The Italian can't speak English but fires a gun is definitely like the highlight of this chapter.
Was that the description you were talking about?
Yeah. So the distinction drawn here is that while they're like moralizing about how people in Worcester are celebrating the 4th of July, everyone who can leaves and goes somewhere else for the 4th of July. They go on vacation, kind of like leaving the city to this ford that they're so afraid of. So like just do with it what they will. Like there was this line in, maybe it was this chapter or the other one on the 4th of July, where like the mayor would have like a retreat out in like Leicester or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd invite people up. That was the other chapter about the 4th of July.
And then they also talked about how then the middle and upper classes started to want to stay because of fears of their property being destroyed. So that was
Yeah.
more of the understanding of why they needed the safe and sane movement.
Right, right.
Of its concern over property damage.
Yeah. Yeah. If we go away too much, they might start partying up on the west side. We cannot have that.
I just want to point out later on in the chapter when you get to like the safe and sane movement, like gets kind of it like turns into something else as the country starts to prepare for World War I. And we
Right.
do get another weird ritual. So yeah.
Where
The
is
message
that?
of America 161. The message of Americanization of labor management harmony became even more explicit and strident in the 1917 celebration, which gathered 10,000 Worcesterians in front of City Hall for a quote ceremony of citizenship. The assembled crowd recited a quote civic ritual, which included a pledge of labor management cooperation.
Do thy love thine boss? That's crazy. A pledge of labor management cooperation.
Fun rituals.
That is so crazy.
I think later on, 162, it said that basically like the labor unions were at some point just like during the war they decided, okay, let's cooperate with the CLU joined the Metal Plate Association and Chamber of Commerce, the business delegation to the ceremony of citizenship.
Oh, so they're doing it.
So it was kind of like done with with the union being complicit somehow.
Yeah, they were like co-sponsors of the ceremony of citizenship.
Mm.
Which is
Yeah, that's gross. Talk about the message of class harmony and the national interest seems to have penetrated at least some segments of the working class. Yeah, I'll say we now have like an entire media infrastructure of getting the working class to like work against their own interests. Yeah, here if this was the time when that division started happening, it's mission accomplished. Yeah, the safe and sane movement had forged a community solidarity of sorts. it went from 4th of July to being like militaristic, like jingoistic, like
Yeah.
trying to like beat the war drum. And like that's a very fucking dark train of thought to go down. Like the like the spirit of wartime being a cudgel to further exploit and make complicit a working class, right? This is like a little sliver of how that happens, and that's dumb. You know, considering that we've, I don't know, I was 11 the last time we weren't in a war. Yeah. But
10,000 people were at that ceremony.
10,000 people were at the ceremony. I don't actually. He said it in the first chapter, but it wasn't as big as it is now, and it's 200,000 now. So even if
That's
it's
still a big crowd.
that's a huge crowd. Yeah. So yeah,
Because I was wondering, how diverse was this crowd who showed up for this
Right.
ceremony?
yeah,
Who was represented there? I mean, it's probably nobody.
yeah. That the patriotism really helps screw workers. It's weird how that works. Funny how that works. So I didn't understand this ethnic chauvinists on the bottom of page 165. Catholic Americanists, for example, face a continuing challenge in the Irish community from people Meagher calls ethnic chauvinists, who remain committed to Irish nationalism in more class-conscious economic and political positions. Like that made you in this time period a chauvinist, like
Would be there.
because
Not assimilate.
like America is the lady in the chauvinism, or like I don't. That's crazy. That's like a head trip. How dare you try to cling to your ethnic identity? That makes you a chauvinist. Really crazy stuff.
It's usually used the other way around.
But yeah, exactly. It's like a flip on it.
The top definition for chauvinism is fanatical patriotism.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I just had it wrong. I just understood the.
And I just can't use it in that one way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's usually used
Like if you're
from the left to sort of like mark someone that's not, looking towards like the common cause, but rather like minding their own like national interests.
Oh, okay.
But in this case, it's coming from the right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky one for me, but I guess I just need to read the dictionary.
The way I understood this was kind of an anti-melting pot thing.
Yeah.
That as various ethnic communities kind of inched into middle class status, they were supposed to completely buy the melting pot thing and give up their ethnic identities.
Right.
But these ethnic chauvinists were like, no, I'm Irish and I do this and the working class and I'm not buying this whole thing.
Right.
So even though chauvinist is not, we don't think of it as a good word, right? But there's a certain amount of like holding on to my identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But chauvinist is also like a negative.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was negative because it was anti-middle class and it was anti-melting pot.
Right. They were also loathed because they, on bottom of 166, if you didn't, you weren't patriotic unless you championed American capitalism
Right.
and denounced foreign socialism.
Still.
Right. And then you have to promote sober and respectable behavior. And you can spread these ideas through the Catholic community. You must be pious, loyal to the country, and have no foreign ideas. You gotta be a little bit fascist. Maybe a little bit fascist to get along in this time period. And the way that this chapter concludes is that like there was really no way to stop people from shooting fireworks off on the 4th of July. Against all of their best efforts, people were still going to do it. They had honestly more success in getting the working class to co-sign the war movement than they did to get them to stop shooting off explosives. And we see that to this day as well.
Just the indomitability.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's like it's, yeah, the firework is just a symbol of working class solidarity. It stretches back generations. The M80, the M80 is the affirming symbol of the working class. Yeah, the Roman candle, the bucket of Roman candles. Yep. So don't let anybody make you feel bad about shooting off fireworks.
Or making a homemade cannon.
Or making a homemade cannon. Or buying some weird horn. And being obnoxious. It's like if you know the rich continue to get richer and
But we can be really fucking loud.
we can be wicked obnoxious. They cannot stop us from being obnoxious.
Really
They cannot stop us from being drunk. Cannot stop us from being obnoxious. Try as hard as they might. It's going to be easier to send us to Arden Forest than it is to get us to stop it. So I think that's a good place to leave it. What do you guys think? Yeah, this was fun. These were very cool chapters. These were interesting. Yeah. So we'll have one more meeting on this book on a Thursday in September, I think. I need to still check the school committee schedule because we do them on the off Thursdays of school committee. At least that's the idea. But I'll be sending out an email about that. The 2 chapters we got, we're going to finish the book at the next meeting. This is kind of the chapter 7, chapter 8, and the conclusion are kind of like ushering us into the modern world and how like leisure became commodified and opened up new markets for the exploitation of the working class, but also more opportunities. I think it's pretty interesting stuff. So that we will do probably late September.
And is there a vote for the next book?
That's a good question. I have a couple ideas. I think that we should get like maybe like a submission form or something going because I'd love to hear people's ideas for the next book. There's 2 of them that I want to do. Homelessness is a housing problem. Is a really good book about the current homelessness situation, and then Evicted by Matthew Desmond.
Oh, that is.
I haven't read it, so I'd love to read it for the first time. Yeah. But I'm open to suggestions. I think that keeping it like a sort of heady nonfiction book club is like the way to go. But there really aren't that many books about Worcester, so we can't go too far down there. Although Abby Hoffman's biography is a fun read, so that might be a good one. I don't know. Well, I'll get like a submission thing going where people can put ideas in.
Okay.
Then at the next meeting, come to the next meeting with like some of the ideas, and yeah, we can vote on it. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Cool. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everybody who was watching on Twitch. Thank you Oliver who walked by and then left us a comment. Hey, sorry, just looking in. Gotta head out momentarily. Love you, Oliver, as well. And yeah, I'll be sending an email out in a couple days about the next meeting in September. I got some bookmarks here if you guys want them. And any donations to the Worcester Community Media Foundation would be appreciated. And you can do that online as well. I don't have the link though. So just figure it out. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Wait, Sally, you're not shut up. No. We would never shut up.